我上ye che dan so ye jo nam la e chan jo par do da ne ye sun je da ge chen so ye be so nam je do la ben chen sang ye do par sho sang ye che dan so ye jo nam la e chan jo par do da ne ye sun je da ge chen so ye be so nam je Dola Benjen Sanje Do Varasho Sanje Chedan Soye Chonan La Chancho Bardo Dani Kyalchunje Dake Chenso Jebe Sonamje Dola Benjen Sanje Do Varasho Simchen Damje Dewa Dan Deve Yodan Demaranjo Simchen Damje Dungal Dan Dungal Je Yodan Dawaranjo Simchen Damje Dungal Mebe Dewa Dan Medawaranjo Simchen Damje Nyerin Jadan Yedan Danyam Lai Ne Baranjo Roje Simchen Damje Dewa Dan Deve Yodan Demaranjo Simchen Damje Dungal Dan Dungal Je Yodan Dawaranjo Simchen Damje Dungal Mebe Dewa Dan Medawaranjo Simchen Damje Nyerin Jadan Yedan Dave Danyam Lai Ne Baranjo Roje Simchen Damje Dewa Dan Deve Yodan Simchen Damje Dungal Dan Dungal Je Yodan Dawaranjo Simchen Damje Dungal Mebe Dewa Dan Medawaranjo Simchen Damje Nyerin Jadan Yedan Danyam Lai Ne Baranjo Roje English.
To my enlightenment, I took refuge that Allah is Sangha. And by the merit created in this practice, may I attain the state of Buddhahood of all sentient beings. From now until my enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. By the merit created in this practice, may I attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. From now until my enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. By the merit created in this practice, may I attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separate from joyful. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of husband and wife. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings be separate from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings be in equanimity, free of husband. May all sentient beings be happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings be never be separate from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings be happy through our pious attachment and God. It's ground and all get good perfume, strong, small, narrow, and so continents. Soon glide the Muslim moon. I visualize this to the field and may all living beings enjoy the pure light. Idam Guru Pranamenda Adya Dariya.
Good afternoon. This new one, some dish, and Teneta Tring, and so Lobsang Pato, the Kazan, Simjong of Junga chicken, Nane, Tassimjong. Kundong Dosin Bache, Tatrin Kapsubapan, Lobsending, and so Yunga said, Tire, Chitani, Yunga said to somebody, chicken, Nations, Trotsardina, Tati, Tukundu Susogi, Chick, Kodebata, Tendishi, Chadegore, Tachitane, Yulnga said to Zambala. Chik Tangaranzo, the Sajala Mason, Tende Tenkeba, Tanda Dido, Nedoji Chawaina, Di Saja Digala Di, and you can do de Degore, Digala Di Degore, the Sajala Mason, Tena Te, and Tenkeba de la, and Yulneba, and the Chidane, the Shugorova. Tana Jingi Tanda Digala, and Yungata into Zambala, Dumba, Meba, Temba, Tingin. Sherab zetu zambala ta chik tiki chidane chir din shung din nang la rimba chene tiki ene chik sanyi tang yewa dashe tende sung yung gintu te ngan la ene ngarangi chidane samlo to uchi chewa ene di suso ki ngene kenda kengi guru te tila yang khande shung ni shaba na shing senare ta tende chik khande chik suso ki di re ki ene tiki ene kowa dawa te kang tutu ki ene 소소라 레토야 남고야데 개침보지 동거도 페나 다 듬바 세나레 메바 듬바 메바 에네 듬바 다 메바 나랑기 섬초도 텐데센 텐데시 슈바이나 다 듬바 세트 삼발라 저기 직 미유다 다 에네 직 레와도 텐데기 소도 차오 다 나진기 메바에 대한 다오도지 차게 두데 메바다 지단에 단다 슈니 샤바나지 듬바데라 카레스나 파기기 유기에네 된 오보 데바데 에네 두바체야다 메바에나 타테 율 텔라 요바 테테신 테나신기 에네 소소 테다 테신도 에네 샤바 딘데지 디용와 딘데기 레와도 차오라 다 템바다 띵인진 에네 지단에 뒤균도 직나저 기용다저 캠바도 오지레 지단에 템바세도 상발 나저 강 창바다 딘데지 릭 any temba tatiki any yawa shipsal ma yongdo tingin setu sambala tanganzo kang changba de any chik komdi chene any number shaba any sherap setu sambala ta tandanganzo chik chanche ki ne khandeshila ene chik shebar cheba tindishila ene tanganzo roto tindishi shuba ene
Good afternoon to all. And from the 51 mental factors, we went through 5 omnipresent mental factors, and today we will be covering 5 determinate object mental factors. And these 5 determinate objects are something that is very much regular and familiar in our life, and you have also studied this earlier. And so the 5 determinate object, it's on page unmarked 111. Mental factors with the determinate object.
page number
Page 111, unmarked. 111. It doesn't have a marked page number, but so 110. Determinate object, it in simple understanding, it refers to something that is certain, definite, like in a sense, definite, certain place or location. And when we cite these or list these 5, these are listed as aspiration, resolution, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Again, probably you are familiar with all of this as stated earlier. And just you give us own kind of opinion, understanding of these five in simple form. Beginning with the aspiration. Aspiration is like objective, hoping, to attain something. And resolution is very similar to the aspiration, but uh, aspiration in the text explained as kind of something that is desirable and trying to achieve that. But on the other hand, resolution is wanting to become that you are, that you have a resolution or hoping to become that. The third, mindfulness, again, whatever that you have studied and learned earlier, able to remember that, not forgetting. And then next, concentration is whatever that you have studied or familiar to become more kind of familiar with that object. And then wisdom is, to become more to investigate or analyze that you have already understood or studied. Although these particular definition, classifications, and the more detail will follow.
어디지? 단단히 대남라기 디버루디 셈바데 로샤나. 그냥 되게 닝보도 데도도 지르는 거.
장보딜레.
디네 디버루. 돔 데버루.
So the text begin with kind of sort of synopsis or summarized version. The very first paragraph. Second, the five mental factors with the determinate object are: first, aspiration; second, resolution; third, mindfulness; fourth, concentration; and fifth, wisdom. The compendium of ascertainment says, do any that are not omnipresent arise? There are many that are not omnipresent, but the main ones are the following five: aspiration, resolution, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. They are said to have determinate objects because they ascertain only particular objects. In this order: a desired object, a determined object, an object of acquaintance, and an analyzed object. The compendium of ascertainment says, in relation to which determinate objects do any of the omnipresent mental factors arise? There are four types in this order: desire, determination, acquaintance, and analysis. The last is for concentration and wisdom, whereas the rest are for the first three in that order.
어디지? 단다 디나니 송바나신기 페나 다단다 디가수 단다 ngazu 율게 nga데기 네 율데 율nga데 네 nge바체타 직 율nga데 ngon진 딘데 슈구도 페나다 되게 율게 nga데기 율 카레카레 네 직 nge바제 세바이나 페나 당보 듬바기 율데라 되바 ene mebagi yuldela ngeba segido ene ngebaje ene tembagi yuldela ene tiba ene tingin zindagi yuldela ene nyawar tabada ene nyawar tabar cheba ta tingin zinda shirabni yul tawdo chedo tonda dorduna tanda di dobala na nganzo gi ta chik pena dumbagi yuldela doba sete samba pena nganzo gi pena lobjong chegen ji yimba ina chik mao balanga ene chik mg doctor da ene chik engineer de la soba tindigi ene kunlong da miyu kheba te tela tene tegi ene chik trubegi tendo ene bezun jeba to ta digi ene ta deba chik khala son ta dumba digi ngeba yuldela ene deba de shado ta na je ngeba ze tu sambala meba digi ene yuldela ene ngeba ze tu sambala ta korangi ta mixa gi yul khanda khaimba pena meba chesa gi yul tanganzo gi ta sanga gi kalo sunje tende nambe kabla ta chik te insambe meba ta chik kiko gi jago ta kiko gi nangla soba tende la ani chik mangbu chi nga zo sem gi ngone chi me ba da de da de la lep song sam be me ba nang ze se sung do de ni kala na de da de de jin ni de la le ba da de la le be ni me ba de chi la ko gore de gi yul de nge ba de sung do ta triba se de sam ba la triba de se na ta nga zo chi kyun ring bo kom ba da de la de ne ta nga zo chi temba ten da de so ba yong gora de chi la ni ta ko gore 다 녀월 딱바 녀월 딱바 저 선발라 때 되기에는 딱진 제바 아니 되고 거기 저 곰네 아니 되기에는 던 고알라 때네 되곰바 된지지기나 아니 띵인진 셔럽 저 선발라 제징 셔럽긴 가르치고서는 제징 딱배 아니 다 율대소 다 녜바이나 되기에는 셔럽 지단 디간라 아니 단다 디간라 아니 시스도 당 데네도 지단 율게 바데 나데 율수수수라 데네샤샤도 다 타마니데 도도 지레스 다 디기데 단다 디 버루이데게 된다 도데 데네지레스
So in this paragraph, we see the five determined object or definite objects of these five mental factors, and these five particular or specific objects are identified, and these are, as said here in this order, a desired object for the aspiration, determined object for the resolution, and the object of acquaintance for the mindfulness, and analyzed object for the wisdom and concentration. They are very they are very similar. So these five desired object, beginning with the desired object as an object for the aspiration. For example, somebody who is engaged in academic study, wanting to become a physician or engineering, and aiming at that, and then having a desire to achieve that. That would be the desired object of pursuing knowledge or learning. And determine object as an object for the resolution. In the system of Vajrayana, there are various ways of doing resolution. Meaning in this context, one sort of visualize mandala and then sort of moving or taking sort of journey from one location to another. You just practitioner does this through kind of visualizations, which is resolution here. And the third, for the object of the mindfulness, is the object of acquaintance. So in order to have a mindfulness, the object that you are aiming should be something that is already familiar, and that is already acquainted. And then for the object of the concentration and meditation would be, especially for the wisdom, would be object, analyzed object.
shiwa di do ina da di chidan dina nyawar takpas 다 소소 셰럽단 띵엔진 군이 더 더우지 차도고도 아니 셰럽단 띵엔진 다 띵다 띵엔진네 띵엔진베 율 딱베 율다 다 딱바당 아니 셰럽기 아니 따진 쩨베 율델 따진 쩨베 율델라 아니 제다 바라 아니 데니 송도 데스 켜바도 데니지도.
So the analyzed object would be object for both concentration and wisdom. There's a great resemblance for the object of these two.
디나가다 디스 카카도 양심 받디 ngade lo do ji cha yong de gi to ta da ra 어디 제 때는 다 디니 와라 아니 단다 디 단다 ngaka line chike yang chike dido subject o che bayana ngo tang da she tang chele ani yewa den shi shi pecher sangmala den yo ba den she yong do ten di do chene te tang bu chik lo ti gen ta do ji cha yong do ta pe tang den la pa yang chik ko do this ya karena chik nyeng ro ti ngang jo logi ani din ma yang shugi cho Denima, ngota.
And these five are explained later in the text in four kind of four components or parts, starting with the nature, and then second is etymology, third function, and fourth classifications of mental factors. So as we go through the reading and more kind of put closely of these attributes, it's become more clearer.
Denima, years for Puchima lotion, Mambudi.
Kagi
Dumbagi Yena says to
Dumbaga's Lord.
Dumbagaji.
So let's start with the aspiration on the same page, second paragraph. First, to explain aspiration, the cause of aspiration is to see the qualities of the object and so on. The definition of aspiration is a mental factor that upon observing a desired thing seeks to attain the thing by its own power. An example is a mental factor that seeks to attain qualities that have not arisen in oneself in order to give rise to those qualities. As for the meaning of the term aspiration, it is so called because seeking the thing that is its object enables the mind and all the mental factors with which it is concomitant to aspire for its object. The Compendium of Knowledge says, what is aspiration? It is very wish to endow with this or that attribute of a desired thing. Its function is to act as a basis for generating diligence. The function of aspiration is directly to produce diligence and indirectly to bring about an increase in all known good qualities. The Compendium of Ascertainment says, what function does aspiration have? It has the function of giving rise to diligence. When categorized, there are three types of aspiration: aspiration wanting to meet with the object, aspiration wanting not to be separated from the object, and aspiration seeking to obtain the object.
Odiche, ta tanda digi tondo dolo ro shubayna tanda digi tsanyi dawo de la ngobo kangchi la mibe migne ta digi ani chik susu la ani tobagi doba ani tondo nyene ani tende tondo nyewe semjung de la de sizido ta di nang la ani rangtop ki la de samba pe de tanda ni tanda digan la nganzo la ani chik susu ki pe de la ani rang la yonten ma ye panam kebe che du yonten de tondo nyewe semjung se de samba la chike ngazo yenden khandi la beba ina tegi beba tela teni tanganzo la chik shen dan khari na chik ya kosalam cheba ina memba dan dende changen yinba ina te changpa tela teni khari thokiri ta MG changen ji yinba ina memba chaya dan ta tema yinba shenba ina lopsen shenba changen yinba te dan tegi ina trupde thoba tela ene tanganzo phane ma rangtop ki la tu samba te changpa tegi trupde tela teni ene chik memba changen yinba ina memba ki trupde te thomba tegi 다 되기 로종 집이 교림 때 되기에니 갈라버다 또기 네 다파기 토바라 될라 네 다지 딩을 건조 랑도 될라 다다지고 거기서 말아 어디 네 때네 파기 토바 될라 온데네 지차게 빼띠기 고도 다이나야 다는 다셰도 제바이나야 다 랑유 돈도 녀베 고네 랑다 디 송반 디나라 송반 나신기 다데 Sulden setu sambala susu samba miyu dedang kumbal tembe pagi mixa karelana pena memba changen jena membe gieni lojon shen la sopa kare mikba tegi ni tama ni memba gi kone toba te mikbe ni semdela ene chik yula ene chik susu la ene
토베기니 직 뭐바다 뭐 듬바 요바 텔라 네다 직 듬바 제데다 다셰당 디디디제 다가나진기 단다 디간라 군준나 송바나진 군준나라 데병오보 텔라 데당 텔 뎀버 데바니 도제 송바나 신지니 towa cheni tobe ene le chawa pena tubjeto wode ene member ene changba chetu ene member gi ene lobjon cheba tela tene member ene kone toba te teltabu dana te ene chele ta ene di ene dasheche ene dana jen chele de ya tanda din kunju lobati gi ken yugre de chele dimba de gi ene che lega do to khariche gore se disambala ngos tundu kya bar cheba da ngosu ene ta chik dimba de gi ene so la ene ngopo lobjon ina da chawa ina da khanda khan ina te la ene chik tsolwa da tundu do chik nuba shikchir do ya gi di kya bar cheba da yune ene sheja yunden la so ba ta de ene khanda khan cheba de ene kondo phewa cheba de chik phewa da taran dina sumbana jen daudo di resha tar tarna di degi ene captain semala ene chik tanda duwari doi ge longsung bana jin to ene chunju chombar chebe ene legend jila ene kar chele ta dene degi chisu ene tanda di ganla ene dumba de la yawa do cheba ina ene tebar döben dumba da middle döben dumba tebar döben dumba se sambala tu kadu yimba ina chik ngopo ina ta chik khande je yimba ina te da ene chik tendu nyamdu de ya ge ene dumba do ene middle döben dumba en chik te da ene chik khaga mando wa da tende ge ene samba ene tendu nyerwen dumba se samba te ta ene ngopo ina ta chik kare chik chokanda khanyamba te ene chik 톱되기 dimbe ene madewada sum te re la yang ta chik tanda kondu sumbe ene yurunga bo re la yang kare yosare zena tanda gewa dang megewa luma dengi ene yawa sum sangmala yobar chikwa sumba najin tendeji yoba sungadu di
Um, so in the definition of aspiration, when it says mental factor, upon observing a desired thing, seeks to attain the things by its own power. And own power, we have questioned on this earlier. So again, if you use an example of somebody studying and trying to become a physician, that effort becomes, the effort that person put into to become a physician becomes what's considered here as its own power. It's through its own power or through its own effort that individual made. An example is a mental factor that seeks to attain qualities that have not arisen in oneself in order to give rise to those qualities. As for the meaning, etymology, the aspiration, it is called because seeking the thing, that is, again, the seeking the thing, if we use an example of becoming a physician is the one that, is trying to become. Thing that its object enables the mind and all the mental factors with which it is concomitant to aspire for its object. So mental factors, which is in this case, aspire to become a doctor. And with that, one making kind of effort or diligence. And then we see a quote from Compendium of Knowledge. What is aspiration? It is a very wish to be endowed with this or that attribute of a desired thing. So whatever that you are desiring, having that, wish to achieve that desired thing. So in our case, example of becoming a doctor or physician, and that can be attained through making an effort. And the function of such aspiration the directly what it does is that when you have an aspiration, that it makes you to make an effort, or here it says to produce diligence, effort, diligence, and then indirectly through that effort you gain knowledge, so indirectly to bring about an increases in all good qualities. So through that effort comes the all good understanding and knowledge. That's the indirect result. And then we have a quote from Compendium of Ascendment saying, what function does aspiration have? It has the function of giving rise to diligence or effort. And the types here mentioned three. The first one is aspiration, wanting to meet with the object. To meet with the object, meaning to be with that object, whatever that you are trying to aspire, trying to achieve. To be with that object, or to be with that, thing that you are trying to attain. And second, aspiration, wanting not to be separated. So as says, not to be separated, or not to be separated or departed from the object. And then third, aspiration, seeking to obtain the object. Again, desirable or wanting to that object. So in other cases, these can be also classified into virtuous, non-virtuous, and neutral, three types of aspiration.
So tene ta nipa de ne meba de la yang tarang dinde to timba mangbu shira mangbu mewa ina dine di korang ki sazam par to chik lo shana.
So just read this section. The second, again, a resolution. Second, to explain resolution, the course of resolution is to see, hear, or remember, and so on the qualities of the object. The definition of resolution is a mental factor that by its own power, upon perceiving an object previously seen, heard, and so on, has the aspect of apprehending it to be just so. An example is an instant of mental factor that in relation to an object ascertained through analysis, things, quote and unquote, it is just so, in accord with that ascertainment. Likewise, the Compendium of Knowledge says, what is resolution? It apprehends the ascertained thing to be just as it is ascertained, so it functions to prevent diversion. According to the commentaries on the Treasury of Knowledge, resolution is not necessarily a mind that realizes its object, because there are non-virtuous resolution that apprehend their objects in accord with false ascertainment of those objects. To explain the etymology of the term, the Sanskrit word adhimoksh has the connotation of determining its object. Hence, it is called resolution. There are following differences between resolution and discernment. Resolution by its own power prevents diversion of the mind from its object, whereas discernment by its own power applies a classificatory convention to the object. Also, resolution by its own power apprehends its object to be just so, whereas discernment merely distinguishes its object. The function of resolution is such that in regard to its object's qualities, or false or neither, it resolves the object to be just so and prevents diversion to something else. The Compendium of Ascertainment says, what function does resolution have? It is the function of being resolved about good qualities, false or neither of those regarding the object. The Compendium of Ascertainments categorizes it into three divisions: resolution perceiving good qualities in its object, resolution perceiving faults in its object, and resolution perceiving neither good qualities nor faults in its object.
No dice ta tene ma ta da ti tangbo mebe gyudo de la yulte yenden tonwa ta töpa temba so se sungdo ta digi ne torito uji shuba na cheda meba la mebe gyudo de la ne yenden ne tonwa töpa temba so se pena pe chaja na ngado tanda ti ngado midi chik chizo na la pemba gyachimbo chegen ki ne chik kanza sudan suyimba na ti kogi che lega chega tela tane tanganzo te kodi yabo yimba te deshin to chik tende to chik mangbo yonga yene samba ta kunlong tende cheba tela ta to tende shila kogora ta di ne tanda digi maybe ki yudi condition go ne yenten tongwa ta theba ta tenba so ne ta ne meba kya ki yudi ngor ta chidane tanda nge ne tanda shugo de meba la de tanda resolution la ne engine la de shugo do digi ne tanda nganzo gi samba na chingi meba de ko kyan zola tada koguyeme ne tada je koma agoma sanra ina ya ta chidane tanda digi meba de la ne chidane namgyun ne kyamur mo chigi ji sungu do jodan tinjola pena ngama phela ani lama chigi ani sunju ta de nawe kapla ani tandanga ju sanga dang wang dang de nawe kapsula chiji nya be me ba chiji ta ani chik ta chik me ba je de sanga gi sunju de na la ma bo yong de sambala shugu de la ani tanda ko ani ya lama je kapsu ani mar tu bu chi ya keje ani mar de ya lama bi ne ani chik 다 얘네 톱소냐 배매 반저 세네 데데기 손에 다데 바 케드 데데 영거 던다데 다직 팔라 다다 페테나 신게네 다 메발라야 되기 고야도 온덴디시 차기도
Um, the course of resolution in here begins with saying, seeing, hearing, or remembering the qualities of the object, course of the resolution. Um, so, for example, in our community, if there is a person who is very beneficial, helpful in the community, then having a thought of wanting more of that kind of person in community, wishing, desiring more, that would be kind of resolution the Tibetan word merpa. And here Geshe was saying he is not sure whether you are getting the same understanding of the Tibetan word in or through this English translation. In the His Holiness the Dalai Lama's teachings, he shared this Tibetan word merpa here translated as a resolution. So it would be like he used to say that in Vajrayana teaching, the teacher would instruct a student to kind of visualize, such and such, and that visualization would be resolution in here. And also in a kind of more, there's more kind of sort of funny story than the one of the follower or participants, he picked up a chunk of butter and he offered that, and then he said, "You visualize receiving this from me," without actually giving it. So in that sense, that was used in Tibetan kind of understanding of the word merpa, or this translated here as a resolution.
Ani tarang mepagi ngodo tanda tarang dinan sumbana jingi tarang dindeji tusem she tuba ina digore yulngebi ngarngebi yulchi la min randoji te dina di losawa tarang de pena tegi pedo de la ini tenji la tane ngeba nyene ter tagarang ins inyabe dide tarang sumbana jin tingena digidu 다 peche tanda dine ma loba na chingi ta tsangma shu ta shu goya sa shira tongmendo.
And you can have also the understanding of what is given in an example in here after kind of definition. Instead of mental factor, that in relation to an object ascertained through analysis things, it is just so, that in accord with that ascertainment, you can have that understanding as well.
어디 젤레 데라 랑게 율기 연된 소테 코나터 메네 테 코나터 메네 셴도 미토버 제바 세두 삼발라 아 페나 티기 메바티기 젤레데 다치 율 칸라 연된당 연된이나다 다치 테마인 병고 컨디션 바 티티신도 kona kang ne yoba tejin do ene chik meba tejin do yoba ene chik shemba ge ene ke ma chuk par cheba ta susu gi da wang do ji cheba ene susu gi ta chik taran de la ene ta bo ya wo chine nyar de ba ta bu tende chigi chele chigi do.
The function of resolution in the text such that in regard to an object's quality or false or neither, it resolves the object to be just so and prevents diversion to something else. So as said here, it's kind of holding on to the object, whatever that may be, and not letting it kind of divert or diverse to something else.
Dice tiene yewa de la yenta yewa sum do ta pena rang mi yenten la mi be me ba da te kyon la mi be me ba te kyon yon kha ya ma yin be me be mi pa ji mi yul de la yewa tsemba do sum ta tina ne sum ba na jen ta tinge ya te ta rang resha.
And it is classified into three divisions, as said here: resolution perceiving good qualities in its object, perceiving false, and then resolution perceiving neither good quality nor false, or kind of neutral.
Oh, dice tiene ta tiene ma ta rang tiene to chini lo tina ya sa re sam sam ya. 다 숨바데 네 템바데기 네 템바데기 규데 칸데 규데라 단디간라네 쿠바당 템바 렘바라니 템바체베 nga tibi yullimbayang loben diche pena kuba 신도 kuba당 세두 삼발라 직 다직 라마 라이네 직 다 디네마 차상지 로세나 다 디네마 춘주니 숨바나제 라마타니 토발레 켐보셰스 템바야 직베 칼데 규르체바 템바달라 니도 케스 게베셴엔라 직 신엔다 토바다 켐보 토발레데 잠바 게베셴엔라 템바 덴데 템바다 아니 켐베 담바 셰스 냠바 켐보다 로벤라 소바다 라마 게베셴 강숨바 냠바 아니 ngosa sheba setu sambala 직 강 remba de ngoza sheba je de zambala tanga ju 강 imba de maimba maje bata ta chi 강 imba cheba de shila ngojena digen shenji me tope ne shenji ne chi megire sambe jigba dan demba kawa dan dembe kansa ki labala kubar chebe temba kebar sumba shin setu zambala di tanda di temba digina la ne tanda tembeki eni kyudote tembeki kyude kandeshi reza waina imbaina tanda dinane sumbana chenge chik geweshen tanda di pondu shubana chenge odinde chik ngeba chena digidu dinma lone tene ta
Mindfulness, the third on page 113. Third, to explain mindfulness, the cause of mindfulness is great appreciation, and only objects with which one has developed prior familiarity can induce mindfulness. Shantideva's Compendium of Training in Verses says, mindfulness arises from great appreciation. Also, Shantideva's Engaging in the Bodhisattva's Deeds list some other causes that produce mindfulness. Owing to accompanying their teacher, following their guru's instruction, and out of fear, those fortunate ones who practice with respect easily generate mindfulness. Mindfulness arises from companionship with the virtuous friend, listening closely to the instructions taught by the learned master, having a sense of shame and fear of being reproached by others, and respecting the holy person's advice. So these are, according to Shantideva's text, cited as in causes of the mindfulness practice. Virtuous friend, or a spiritual teacher, listening to the teachings, instructions of the learned masters as well, and having a sense of shame, meaning not doing what is inappropriate, and also being reproached by others, and respecting those holy persons' advice or the virtuous friend and learned masters.
어디제 다다네 디단단다네 템베기네 규데제 템베기 ngodel라 페낭알 티비 율라 미네 란토기 미제베세 레젠지 셈종 세드 잠바다 딘데스 ngar tibi yul setu sambala chik nganzogi ta chik komdi dang changba dang ta chik tu yulden do ni chik ne desa tendegi dela tenne ene chik nganzo temba tende ke ngoro te ene temba ke ba te mijebe lejengi ene semjung jila ene kharse na temba se sungo pena tanda digal pe sombana ngar chungdu ni tibe phama pinje tembe tenshi tabu setu sambala pe digi tanda chungju ni tibe setu chungdu kapso da pama da pinja da tende kapso da chik gyonrimbo ne de sambala digi ene nga zogi gyonrimbo da khunzo nyamdo ne de sambala digi ene temba tabu de tanda digi pe sungo da digi na ngomba kunjo nan temba kangshe na tibe ngopo la semji sheba me parte ese chik da 강 komdi 첨부 네바 대기 에네 오볼라 에네 다셈라 마제버 네바텔라 에네 가르시게잖아 템바시게레스 템바데 케버기 추숨다 덴데스 유지 케버 티빙 오보 세드 삼발라 율라 에네 직 교령보 10대 티바스 10대 바다 콤데바 케버 넘버 케버베 유델라 미네 셰바 메바 세드 삼발라 테네 슈크침보 띵 다된다 돌드네 띵 사보 에네 직셈 다 손에 디게니 네바 텐데실라체 에네 첼레기 캬바르 셈 율라 넘버 미어워체바 다셈 다율 텔라 미바디기 에네 셴 율 셴발라 마미바 마미바 체바데 데 에네 세미바 율라 윤두 네베 텐체바 제바제트 삼발 오데르다 제발 셈 율라 네베 데바텔라 넘버 셈 네데 미닝 에네 셈 셴발라 메어워체베 에네 캬바르 숨데 티숭고도 ngar mati bala penatanda diante digala suma ngar mati ene chike nga so dewa to senare tatigala komdito ane komdito sheta meba ta tendela ene temba miki yuji kebar la tibe ngobo she se sumba na jingi ta nga zogi temba kebala yang chik ngar komdi dang kaya meba chik tendela ene chik temba kigi samaro disungu ngar tigyang tasa luyul do masharna tembar mingyur nambe kebala semji sheba meba jesun ta pena ngar kumdi dang tin chik changba do tin chaba ena chi ene tembar mingyur nambe kebarla ene semji ene sheba meba shedan kebar tembar chaba tene sem koni kondo pero chebe legi kebarla miyo war chebe seba ta kongi ene kebar sumdegi wade ene deshe kaya ngondu odide taran dine ma logi yushanari
Definition of mindfulness is a mental factor that focusing on an object to which there has been previous familiarization prevents the forgetting of it by its own power. An example is mindfulness that recollects one's parents and sibling with whom one has been familiar since earliest childhood. The nature or definition of the mindfulness is it's a mental factor that is focused on the object. That object must be something that is very familiar, that has been familiar, that has been knowable, that has been sort of something that is very close, something that is already recognized or known. And the example here mentioned such as one's parents and sibling that you grew up together, and because of being so familiar, you will then have later, mindfulness or recollection or remembrance. And the quote from Compendium of Knowledge saying, "What is mindfulness? It is a mental factor that prevents the mind from forgetting the familiar thing." And three distinguishing qualities. Three qualities of the object, aspect, and the function. The distinguishing quality of the object, again, as said earlier, it has to be something that is familiar, not something new, basically something familiar. quality of the aspect, not forgetting the object that is focused on. So aspect quality is non-forgetting. And then third, function. What does the function of the mindfulness does is prevents mind from being distracted from the object that is already familiar, and then serve as the basis for the mind to remain continuously on that object. Again, more kind of clarification for those three qualities. Since mindfulness does not arise if there is no prior familiarity, the distinguishing quality of the object is called the familiar thing. So mindfulness only arises the object which is familiar. Otherwise, there is no mindfulness, or more simply recollection or remembrance of the thing if there's no familiarity. Since mindfulness does not arise if the familiar thing does not appear as an object to the mind right now, the distinguishing quality of the aspect is called the mind's not forgetting. So the aspect of that mind is not forgetting what has been, apprehended, which is familiar. And since the mind will become increasingly stable in dependence on mindfulness with these qualities, the distinguishing quality of the function is called the function of non-destruction. So the function, what it does is, because of the familiarity and able to kind of to be with that object, it sort of doesn't let destruct, or won't allow destruction. So therefore, non-destructions.
Tatini ma tanda dashe de la yimbayena, ta mikpa tanda digi temba digi dashe de chebayena, dashe lana temba la tu zambala, rang ta chik soso yul khanda khanda mikbayena, te mikpa rang yul ta digan la suma rang yul sheba meba tembe na temba ta ngopo do na ta yul do khanda khanda yana mikpa te la mikpa te la sheba meba temba tembo cheba te la teni karza karza temba ene tembe chele de la mikpa le de sem shendu miyo war ene tarang te chido nebar cheba de ene mikpa ki temba ki chele ene tanda temba de la yawa ene kondu temba de la ene sumgudu ta na jingi ene semji sambadang ane sambe tembadang luki chebe temba nga lu nga yi sumgi ane temba sum tende sungudu ta tembe divu de la ane minam mijebe temba la tene rangyu la chidu jobe tingin zin soso tobe sherabje yonden tamche rangi gyu la kone kondo pewa cheba azade di sundu zambala ta chidane tanda nga zo di tanda temba sunyo du zambala nga zo 곰기 값수 당아조 곰 세나레 템바 세나레 당아조 벽을 교와이나 mindfulness 단다이니 지 mindfulness 데이터 그 벽을 쳐봐이나 템바도 강에니 소소에니 지 응도에니 지 곰기 거리인 바이나레 다지 뒤균도에니 단다이니 덴데 단다 셈당 셈중기 림바 덴데 창바 델라테니 대에니 지 라에니 유 템바 곤종하다 용행하라 소바 다 tembe temba tembo nyane ni tsechi to gomba tela ni ta gomba sigiri ta na jine gomang chagiri odire tembe tembe tibudo odi dende che minam shebar ma jeba la tene yultse je to joba ta gomdo tarande ta gomba tela tene ni chikte ge mi pa ke bate chebate ne diche ne tanaji odi diresha ne chunjule sumba sem sung de banam ni temba tan ni shijin temba te shijin tamje bebe sungshi che ta ge tel talmon charo ze ne sem sun ta dina sumba na jin temba tan shijin la ten koya de shindu kalchenpo pena ta di ni temba de la ten koya de kalchenpo yinba tanda dina sungudo o din dina yoga na sin dili sungshana de shushana de
Etymology of the term mindfulness is said in the text because it is mindful in not forgetting its object, not letting the apprehended object forget, so non-forgetting its object. And the function of the mindfulness, as said here, prevent movement of the mind away from the object and towards something else. So again, function of the mindfulness is prevent, as said earlier, non-destruction and destruction and movement the mind away from the object towards something else. However, the compendium of ascertainment says, what function does mindfulness have? It functions to recall the memory of what one has thought, done, and said a long time ago. From the point of view of recalling things thought of, actions done, and words spoken out long ago, it functions to prevent movement of the mind away from the object, so distraction. And when classified into three, here it is presented as mind's thought, body's deeds, and voice utterance, basically mindfulness of body, speech, and mind. So three. The effects, the consequences of the mindfulness are, says, in reliance on mindfulness, one does not forget the object. There is an ever greater increase within one's own continuum of all the qualities of concentration single-pointedly placed on its object and of wisdom engaged in fine investigations. And a quote from Shantideva's text, A Guide to the Bodhisattva State, saying, to those who wish to guard the mind, I join my palm together and pray. Make every effort to guard mindfulness and meta-awareness or introspection. So as a result of the mindfulness in practice of the mindfulness, or we say more in Tibetan meditation of mindfulness, when you meditate, you use a mindfulness such as apply that on the focusing on, say, mind and mental factors like 5 omnipresent mental factors or 5 determinate object. And when you're able to gain, stability of concentration on those and not forgetting, then you have attained sort of the consequences or result of the mindfulness, not letting to forget what you have sort of focused your mind upon through meditation. And so in this verse, Shantideva kind of emphasized the importance of mindfulness and introspection or meta-awareness. Yes. So we'll take a break here. Slept in too much and they were calling me since this morning. Yeah. And you have to do all this like and stuff instead of the delivery like that's probably very cool. Are you comparing translations?
Yes. Well, I'm comparing.
No, it's just they have middleman even that
Do you want to see?
and to protect my number.
Oh, yeah.
And then I get reimbursed $20, but it's yeah. But
Either you're looking at this text, no?
So, yeah.
I wanted to be here, and so I was listening on the Zoom,
And then learn to stretch.
and then as I was on the Zoom, I missed my.
You miss the church.
I went from instead of going 65.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Find a quick fix. So here. I don't know if it's good, but.
And so they're
Give no time, right? Oh, so I do. And then before the class, everybody came to the meeting when you were supposed to tell us the cause, right? And then when you something on that, I can hear them. You know?
Well, there are many different, especially coming to the module factors, different translations.
Well, there are, and we just finished in the study group, chapter 5.
Oh, is that 5?
Trempa and Sheshin, like the whole first part, Trempa and Sheshin, so we've been talking about Trempa a lot.
But in the ordinary, we would just say memory.
Yeah, remembering.
Remembering.
Because mindfulness in English can mean a lot of things.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like Sheshin to me. But Sheshin being always being aware of what's in the body and mind. That sounds like mindfulness to me. But mindfulness is usually used, I guess, for Trempa, remembering.
So, but again, but I don't know why they bring this Shantideva verse in here. I think that because Shantideva, mindfulness is all about, perfection. So it's always mindfulness. I would say, Tibetan word would be yang tapa shishi.
Yang tapa?
Yang tapa shishi means.
Yang tapa shishi.
Yeah, it's tempa, it's yang tapa tempa, so that tempa would be virtuous, positive. It's not a general. So
right. Because he's talking about virtue.
Yeah, so when you bring that in, it becomes more complicated, especially
Oh, this is a good point.
So especially when you quote the Shantideva's tempa, the words, specifically comes from chapter 5.
Right.
If you look at those two words, the later one comes first in the chapter 5. The second. Yeah, the first one in the English comes then later. So in order to have a good conscientiousness, one has to have a mindfulness. And then Shantideva explains the mindfulness and its forces.
Yes, but
so
as
it's all about
having a virtuous object, right? Whereas this could be virtuous or non-virtuous. Okay.
So this kind of complicates, especially when you talk about the courses. Why those courses? You teach you that, you quote the words from the Shantideva. Ordinarily, it's hard to understand. But if your mindfulness is a virtuous, then you need a spiritual teacher, instructions, accompanied by Dharma practitioners. Then everything supports.
I see. Yes.
But you can ask questions later.
Thank you so much. That's really a good point.
Yeah, it's complicated. I don't know. I think
that's good.
Oh, okay.
This is exactly what we're talking
about. Yeah.
Yeah, here is use word recognition. And some says that recognition is not correct. And compositional factors, yeah. Mental engagement, right? It's different word. Recognition, intention, yeah.
Feeling, discernment, intention, contact with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, different words.
What is this?
You don't need it, right?
I need to look at the who did that. I don't know. Enrique. Andrew asking.
Well,
It looks like it's kind of old translation.
sure.
Yeah, you enjoy your confusion, okay?
That's the story of my life. No, she's not living with her, but Walden's a little person, so. Walden will call and say, wanna go, and she won't say no. So her wife. Oh, Walden? No. Oh, Martha doesn't know, but Walden, manages a team, so that's funny. That's her big application. So they don't know each other. Is that okay? Oh, it is okay, but it's just different. It's something that Martha's never spent really long with her daughter. When she visits them and spends some time.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Of the five, the first three through mindfulness.
Yeah.
Next time we meet, we will have the final two.
Yeah, two remaining left. If no questions, then we will continue, which I said. Otherwise, if you have questions.
Going together, right?
Does the lower school and the higher school both have the same understanding of 51?
테스트 개발 다 딩에 십자치 슈다에서 케메도데 단다 간다 장아 좀 남진이 되게 원방 군대다 원바 저에서 단다디 원바 군대기 시작도 전에 디레 딘 나진지 따다 다장 가져단 딩에 바로 따다도 슈다에서 알아네 시티네 슈나 되게.
So Geshe said he don't have complete answer response right now. So but he was suggesting if I have any, feel free to explain that. So you have seen in this earlier, in here it is usually said when we talk about Abhidharma, higher and lower school. The higher refers to the compendium of knowledge, which by Asanga. So and based on that Asanga, we have this classifications of mind and mental factors. In terms of the number 51, but the lower school, Abhidharma Kosh by Vasu Bandhu, there are 48 mental factors. So that's a one big difference, 51 and 48. And so usually we called higher Abhidharma and lower Abhidharma. And what we are setting is based on the higher Abhidharma. So therefore the number that we have in the mental factors would be 51, unlike 48. But then if you look at the earlier, you will see in other Pali traditions, different texts, there are many different numbers of the mindful mental factors, ranging from 100 something.
There was a question today with a group that I meet with, talking about whether all the schools of Buddhism use the Pali Canon as the basis.
Oh, okay.
And I believe that's probably true, and then you have commentaries, different teachers. But these are pretty much, coming from a Theravada position. So they're more rigid or retained with using Pali Canon.
저 데리셔 가서 등에는 호랑주 계시 সং선사 어떤 낭백이 저 가래 있는 게그 자외기 시샤사디 빨리기 취규라고 그래. 빨리기에 돌려줘. 더 탱면라는 저거나 테러 이걸 시샤 여러와라도
당에만이 디다 다라리 뭐지 남전에 칼람랑도 다 직내만 되네마 빨리기 이게네 되네마 시자네 다 직게 주네 바지네 되듯이 용이 살아. 근데 순구도 다라네 그래 말해.
So His Holiness often talks about that all initially based or founded on Pali tradition. So it does comes from Pali tradition, and that would be, you were saying that would be correct.
And then it went down, you know, to different places, areas, so.
And then they call it the target ocean is shimba target ocean.
Re. Da chu da tanda nambe chu do targab ki tiji do cheba yana ngani da jagala tar da jagala ngani tar tanda sumbana jingi pali kala pali da sanskrit da tende keri mangbo la chik kyo ne tende yoba da tende chisu ta chik pöla tar tende pöne yang jagala tar tende yang tende se tarwa tende gi lu yu tu sungu da.
So the common interpretation is that, you know, Pali language based Buddhism tradition, and then there's a Sanskrit, and gradually, as you said, you know, it spread into different countries.
Chitani tanda tiki tuchula cheba ina ta chik nambe shungi teshe palnalenda ne sungpe ta chik sungdi tsuki ne tewa dan tende ting sabate ne ta chik pyoge nangla yoba ta chik pyoge nangla chik tamang yoba de ta chik tiri yongda uchira.
And nowadays, Nalanda, so-called Nalanda traditions are mostly preserved in Tibetan Buddhist tradition, and that is commonly, Nalanda tradition.
Ta chidane tanda kanju tenju samay dite ta teme las.
Ale, onda din al gyurda da gyurdis tamda sheshin ledro, sheshin an khalla golo.
Tarere wonde sheshin zede tanda diganlandu sheshin zenda ta ti kurang de la samlo di cheba ina tanda temba dan sheshin zede zamba kang changba de chik yula keba dan ta dindishila ko mare dindishira temba dan sheshin
Kharsum khangjama gyur keba.
ta yula ngeba dan ke ta ngeba dindishila ko resha.
So from the word itself, he was saying able to generate whatever that is known or understood or studied or learn it.
Dindishi mare yan tenam kyan gyan dila yan kwash diyo na suna diga.
So here, you know, the word probably you are more familiar is the introspection. So yeah, so here the translation is different, meta-awareness. But the word that we usually use earlier in many texts is introspection. So most of the time you hear, you know, introspection and the mindfulness kind of goes together, practice, especially in Shantideva's text Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. So probably you remember the, you know, the introspection kind of work like a spy at the corner of your mind, spying, and then when your mind spy sees that mind is wandering, the one that bring back is the mindfulness. So that's how introspection and mindfulness as a mental factor cooperate together in sort of bringing mind to more kind of whatever that you are focused upon.
Question, because we've been studying chapter 5, right, in Bodhisattva's Way of Life, Shishin Somo. We were, in the commentaries it said that Shishin or meta-awareness or introspection is a mental factor that is aware of what is going on in body and mind and all things. Correct? Is that the correct understanding?
Then Quran junjuk liu nga ba shin yu jang shi mein sa. Di na lo shin le de shin de wa den ta da liu nga yi sum gi kala gore ha ko ya sho la. Mon de le shin na.
어디 언디니 도지를 고 어디를 따라.
So you're saying, yeah, that was correct.
That's
This Tenem and I were talking a little bit at the break. When we study chapter 5, Chenpa on Chenpa and Shishin, or recollection, mindfulness for Chenpa, Shantideva is talking about the mind that remembers the virtuous object in that chapter. However, in this chapter is talking about the factor of recollection, whether the object is virtuous or not. Is that
지난 템버 라이드라고 템버 라이드 단다 준주 나올 다 템버 송에디 어 제데라 템베 용어보들 개와 개와기 직세디 진다디 개와 될 때는 단다 디나로라 너무 당하셔라 디나로
숨 이게
디나로 단다 시행이 너무 당도 남마탄이 저걸 김보지스 템버다 직배 예능 규칙과 템버벨라니 되게 데다 아니 단다 뭐 저와데 타지도 데 템버 송에들라 디 템버디 계획 템버디 연구 말와로도 지당 템버디 다 때가로 계획 템버들 계획도 요래라고
다치다네 템바세트 삼발라 산다 티간라 지 템바이나 지 겨와임베 캬와다 메게와임베 캬와텐데 당에 바도 오텐데 메바체 치치다네 단다 디나라이니 템바델라야 숨쉬 이샤기다 템바 겨와다 메게와다 롱마텐텐데 용초그로 디로 뭐기 티바디 다 파기다나라 템바디 카르토 카르스무도 겨와 코나로 스무도
Tindi zamda dijun dili shishan lor tan dina lo lungsh kiyo lama tan zaba dindegi gyugi chamba chiyo rwa kodol gewa gi gewa ma jitangi chamba da lama da chobo dili kiyo go maro himbo jesu
dinde ko mare
dindi zamda tesa tanda digi chamba sunga dili inji minji gewa ingo rwa marwe lago
tanda jitani temba chikpare da temba sunga da inji minji temba ina gewa ingo go mare da.
So the bottom line here saying is that if it is a mindfulness, it doesn't has to be a virtuous. It can be non-virtuous as well as neutral.
Tanda digang la ni temba kiwi gyudo ta pedang zena long tende tane ta temba ki gyudo tende ta sungdo. On tende rore. Ta di tanda chunju chikbaro, chunju sung.
Chazan di kola
deshe de.
Di deshe delta na ko gewe ki tembe ki gyu mando ji jidan tembe ki gyu insa mare la gorta chiwa.
Le.
Di korangi di na jidan tembe la lama da chokwa yo maro kembe jesu.
Di go mare.
So so he was saying, again, the engaging in Buddhist Shandita was called here is the virtuous mindfulness courses, not the courses of the general mindfulness, because mindfulness can be neutral as well as non-virtuous. And so that's what we were talking earlier, right?
Tanda di wa de la ni di la samna de ngo de Quran de la nga tibi yula mine se ma do ta chi do la samna tane de shaing gro tanda di ngo Quran de tsangi do se go ra ta ni shune mo ja
Here, as you're saying, when we talk about mindfulness, just the object will be something that is familiar, which is very general. Yeah, so because we were talking earlier, there's a two quote from Shanti Deva Tinal and this thing more Geshe that Tinal Junju Lungni do Lungni ga Liu Ngabane Su Tangyo do. Then the Lungni ba de ko Junju Koran Shi Sun Jin Lungni wa de Ngel che Gang de Jel do. Lungni wa de Tanda Simpson de Bona Lan Chamba de Shi Shin de Tamje Bebe Song Shi Je la de Tam Shen de Shu Gol Shin de Lung Jema de Le do. Lama Tan Choba la da. Wondi le tangi de Kejedo Chire. So I was saying earlier that, in Shanti there was text at chapter 5. This to those who wish to guard the mind, I join my palms together, pray, and make every effort to guard mindfulness and introspection comes earlier. And then after Shanti Deva Kandebe started explaining, the introspection. Then for the introspection, to generate introspection, what you need is the mindfulness. So mindfulness comes later. And therefore, the mindfulness that he's talking in Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. I was looking at the one of the very beginning of the commentary of this chapter, and it is very specific. Both mindfulness and the introspection here is in the context of what needs to adopt and what needs to be abandoned. So when adopting virtuous, abandoning non-virtuous, then you have this mindfulness. So it is in the context of perfection, not regular or general. 다행히 고랑스 프레시제도 관련된 고랑기 준주기 리웅아베게 단다 심송에 답 첨바되어라 첨바되기 응여라 시신시 아니 시신의 첨바 고랑 이해디 기원은 그 죽도 긴남라 죽도 제갑라 아니 chambadigi khandepole de zambal da ko khalore parjin in zambala ko gewege ngo chilo mando chigi chidang chambadalo ma hum ro shtule den de chambadila ko khalore chekom la shana digru lo to
re ta chegum tanda re tanda 강대 저 텐데 tempas 단다디
tanda de chamba she shoro shin de chambada chekom la shana digru
레레레 디그 단다디 제금 텐데 다 단당한 저 규림 텐데 셴네 단다 텐데 디 제와 땡한 저 제금지 공도 곰기나 제금단 조금 얘기는 아니 다 제금지 공도 알아도
So, from the point of view of two meditations, analytical and meditational placement, we can say that this comes under the analytical meditation.
So the mindfulness could come under combining because it can be positive or negative, right?
Kartiko Morancho, this temba de la Zambaldagoji, Kiawada Miguel, the Zambala, Tichinako, Chegum shower, Chegum shower, Velodo, Chebache.
치달에 템바 코란데 네 조금도 조금 얘기나 네 조금라 자고래 디슨 거래
딜라네 랭겐트도.
디다 다 디다 저그마로 왔다 지단행아 저 템바 다 지단행아 저 유림 된데 지네다 디단 디에네 책 정보 쳐봐데 에네다 제곰당 다 빼나가 저기 다 제곰당 조금 지름 바도 어디를 슈바에나 빼나가 저 지단에 곰 잡이 값술라 소소소소라 직 수풍라에네 직 대통 제와이나 직 수풍아데 수풍아레레레네 다 방아세야들라 다조 미닝아데네 수풍데 강라 내여메 내나 수부 디차세 상말라 여메 제주 체네 타르네 다직 다 얘기 많이 봤대 동바 덴디질라 네 삼로 당국에 살아다 지단에 제치도 내바도 동니 공바도 지바도 덴디질라 슈바이나 단다 지단 템바치부지 덴디질라 지금 알아
So you're saying that it won't be mindfulness per se, but in general we can say it's analytical, but so the point here is that it won't be mindfulness itself, that kind of, that you ask analysis or whether it's a virtuous or non-virtuous.
다 지단에 곰게 림바도 쳐봐이나 림바게 지단에 지지도 좀be 동반이 검단도 어디 림바데
뭐 저와들 저 랭카드 쳐그래 뭐 저와들 단다 게미길라디 삼당디 잠발 아니 게미길라 템바샤니 삼당나 제금 차고 말이야
알레 디스 거 말당이야 디스 거 말다 디게 슈고 말다 다 개와레다 미개와레 디 템바 코란 찍고 찔라 삼다만 땅에 디 어디야 킹고 디치 다 지단에 다 템바도 오지 개와레 미개와레 디리 다 조금 차고르다 땅아도 개와인다 미개와인 데 텔라 삼네 삼로 땅와 디조 조금 차고르다.
So what I was saying is that, if you use the mindfulness as an object of the meditation, whether it is positive, virtuous, and then it becomes an analytical meditation. Otherwise, mindfulness by itself can be kind of, interpreted or said as like an analytical meditation or not.
Shine da tere tangbo da shine da la tongse de ni yonggi du de da dis da tandang shimba shuya de da din ma gom dan te yong de samba digi shuba me na digi do.
So you can take mindfulness as the object of meditation. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, then when you do meditation in which your object of the observation or the focal object is mindfulness, then that meditation would be analytical meditation. That is what he is saying. Yeah, so mindfulness, it's not, in this case, not a subjective kind of thing, but rather objective, out there, observing,
So it's already some concentration of wisdom are already introduced in a way to be able to do that, with actually taking mindfulness as your object.
the temba de la di gom di na lo le na ko moran la jin da ting e jin la ora ting e jin da sherab ni go yong cho ro lo.
re. 다 템바 딜라 때네 다 딜라 띵진다 셰랍라 소바다 용초 쇼그리 템바 페지 용초그리 용초그리 페나 다다 지단에 땅아조 지단에 곰라에데 땅아 시우시우 징아랑오네 디곰 덴데시 nga조 튜균도 테나라 차베나라 송바나 신기 지단에 제곰다 조곰 제곰 제림바 디단 디레즈네 견조의 켄고레 시네 당 라동 이나양 지단이 미냠뉴 요겐지기 곰부디 차겐지기 덴데 숨바데 되게 마테나 nga도지기 덴데 시우시우지 타초보단 덴데 소야민 지기 슈다야 스케민도 게임도 딱 어딘데
So in that case, he was saying, right, it can have concentration as well as be part of wisdom meditation. But when we talk about meditation in general, analytical and concentrational placement, you already have understanding about this. And from his, he can kind of explain decisively, unlike people with actual experience of the meditation.
So it's like
Well,
a circle. So it's like, to me, what comes to mind, my mind is a circle. So if you have mindfulness as your object, then you're applying concentration and wisdom to it. And then your mindfulness deepens with that. So you can go to a more deeper level of analytical meditation, even on mindfulness and everything else above it, the other two, resolution and
Well, morangi the temple led the any
aspiration.
go kalorta kora jagu doji sonan doji sa ko tembege kom doji jagu na endelia things in the sherab ko uro and the sherab that things in kora jane kalore temba cha and the che the temba ko uro ta kalorko.
다 된다로 당해 주고 다 단다디 안조 곰디 값수 다 지단에 당보질 퇴바다 삼바다 곰바 림바도 딘디샤고 당안조 곰 잡아델라 당보 퇴고고 퇴세나마제나 다직 장바체라 제바델라 다 삼고레 삼백 값수 당안조 직 시랍 당 띵인진라 소바 딘디 망보시 다 고고 바인바체 데네 셈체지도 조베 값수 다 템바 코란라 때네 베저 다 거기라 네투바당 덴델라 직 지지도 네투바 덴델라 다직 시랍당 띵인진 기토 이슈 니바당 슈다 요바지 다 디간라 온데네 조도데 템바 곰코란라 네고 덴데지 숭고로.
So in meditation, in general, we explain or talk starting with the just kind of listening or learning. So you first acquire knowledge of how to do meditation, and once you have a knowledge, then next you do contemplation, and in the contemplation you can use a wisdom, concentration, mindfulness as well. But when you do an actual meditation of focusing single-pointedly, at that point, the primary sort of tool that you would be applying is mindfulness itself, although it is sort of accompanied by concentration and wisdom, but able to maintain single-pointedness is done by the mindfulness.
다 디니마 단다 디디 슈샤고 다 디퍼루텔라 띵인지 띵인진지 답나 규도 데티네마 숭도 디니마 디슬로션 나세나게 디 띵인진지 규도 데라 류딘진 엠바데 케오망보 디소스 메바당 셈남 또 라베 엠바데 토바 율나소지 시수 민도와 니데 세pange 띵인진지 규도 데라 딘디간라 딘디 수마나제 페나 토토네타 Dunzin ambassador samba chik su ragba dende nyamduma chik matso bache ambassador samba me batan dende ki tendo uji kogora dende ta injin dena la kandi kyo na dene shu dene kyo mambu diso su me bata mambu me bata chik amba dende jila kogodo sem namto ragbe ki semla namto ragba me ba te tobe yul na so ki shizu Mindoa ni de any kare ni de anything in the you do did sumban dinaje dinama loshana thing in the education things in you for couple de.
We'll continue with the text at the bottom of page 140, concentration. Last paragraph, concentration, fourth mental determinate mental factor with determinate object. Fourth, to explain concentration, the cause of concentration is twofold. First, physical solitude, away from social involvement, that is, away from gatherings of many people. And second, mental solitude, free from gross conceptualization, that is, free from running after various objects of thought. So these two are cited as the cause of concentration. And to continue, the questions of Gagana Sutra says the accumulation of calm abiding unites physical solitude and mental solitude. Furthermore, its causes are placing the mind on the object, mindfulness that does not forget its object, and diligence that places the mind again and again on the object. Maitriya's ornament for the Mahayana Sutra says, the mind remaining inwardly focused depends on mindfulness and diligence. The definition of concentration is a mental factor that by its own power stabilizes the mind single-pointedly on its object and functions as the basis of wisdom. An example is a mental factor that, when fully focused on an attractive object, remains single-pointedly on that without moving away to something else. The Compendium of Knowledge says, what is concentration? It is the single-pointedness of mind placed on the thing investigated and its function as the basis of wisdom. To make the mind single-pointed necessarily means to focus intently on a single object without having a second object. Also, concentration is not the same as attention. Attention directs the mind with which it is concomitant to its object, but it does not, by its own power, give rise to wisdom. A concentration does. The etymology of the Sanskrit term samadhi for concentration has the connotation of apprehending correctly, or that the mind continuously and firmly apprehends its object, hence the word concentration. The function of concentration is to serve as a basis for wisdom, which is its effect. The Compendium of Ascertainment says, what function does concentration have? Its function as a basis for wisdom. The effect of concentration is as follows. In reliance on concentration, the wisdom of special insight arises. Also, it pacifies the mental disturbances and so on that come from attachment, excitation, scattering, and gross fluctuation of thought regarding the qualities of external sense objects, and it makes the mind and body serviceable and so on.
Dice tataran de penata dinama dodo tanda ngunjin de la tanda tingin jingi ngodo de la tadi digan la tanda sumbana je penata tanda ngu pe digani pena tingin jing koran do de gi pesen pe do de la yidon we yulji la lakbar mi be se tele shendu miyo war te chik don ne be senjung tabu ta pe digen ko len tubela pesen shuba yana tingin jing koran ge ne chik ngode kentukure samgado pena tangazo tanda dine sumba nashin kar yuta changazo chidane yul khanda kangla chik sem tingne chik yidong wada tende chik thongwa tela mikpa yin tu sambala shen kare thongwa ina tela miya wa te korang la ina sem tsi chito nepa ngazo nyoyo ngone tsorto kura tela tene tati tingin zingi korang ki kowa de langtu yona tima chidane kondu sumba nashin tara kowa chidane ngode.
So the meaning or definition of concentration, if we use an example that might be easier to understand. The example that is used here is when fully focused on an attractive object, remain single-pointedly on that without moving away to something else. So, whatever object which to you is very attractive, and when